Well, thank you very much. So, not a technical talk. I must say I really enjoyed the last three. We are going to talk about something far serious and far more difficult than something technical, which is modern slavery. So, trigger warning. If this is not the right day to hear about the worst type of human exploitation, please mind yourself. I won't be offended no matter what you do. If you decide to stay, on the other hand, by the end, hopefully, you'll be equipped with simple things you can do so that we can all ensure that slavery doesn't have a space in the rest of the 21st century. So to start with, I would like to introduce you to my grandmother. She was a pretty normal, apart from being a very strong person, who went through a lot of tragedy and kept a huge sense of humor. Actually, my main memory of her is her laughter. And she developed her own philosophy in life. For example, she never locked her door, thinking that if somebody came in and took stuff from her, well, maybe they needed more than her. She also always kept a huge pot of soup to feed anybody who could pass by and be hungry. And I've tasted it. It was pretty dodgy sometimes, what was in there. But it was always of her with a good heart. And the thing she liked the most in her later days was to sit in front of her house and sing songs. And that's exactly what she's doing on that picture. And my apology for the poor quality of the picture. That's the only one I have of her, actually. Her name was Mathilde Girardot. It was also Regina, and it was also Marie. So Regina Mouton and Marie Leuba. And you may wonder why such a simple person would have three names. And I'm not just talking of three names. I'm really talking about three identities and three lives. So much that when she passed away, we actually had to publish three announcements. And then we had to ask the priest who was officiating to refer to her as Mathilde Regina Marie. So we don't have all the time 2/3 of the assembly wondering if that somehow wandered in the wrong place. Now, if you know anything about France and the French administration, they are very, very picky about the ID. They own them, they want them, so they would not allow you to have several of them. So how come this simple person did have three of them? Well, to understand that, you need to go back to summer 1945. The whole world is waking up from a big nightmare called World War II. And France, where the story is happening, is starting a period of 5 years of very, very, very severe food shortages. Almost a famine, actually a famine, to be honest. And Mathilde, it's her real name, is 40-year-old. And she's mourning the loss of her second husband. It's very difficult emotionally, but it's also very difficult financially, because that makes her the sole adult responsible for a recomposed family of 8 children between the age of 2 and 10. Mathilde has a job. She works for the railroad. And it's a pretty great job because it allows her to mind her children when she works. And it also gives her a little house at the middle of the woods, 10 kilometers from the closest village. Now, when I say, and it gives her that house, and don't think about a big house, think about 3 square meters with 3 by 3 meters of cement with some wooden house on top. But it's her home, and she's proud of it. But very quickly, she runs out of money. And she doesn't really know what to do. And then she has an idea. Living in this little house at the middle of the forest, away from everything, made that during the war, she had another name, Regina. And what she was doing, she was helping people escape from France, because that forest leads to the mountains that lead to Switzerland. So she helped people that were British pilots, she helped Allied spies, she helped anybody who needed to flee the Nazi, whether they were Jews or part of the LGBTQA+ community, and she also helped German soldiers who didn't fancy a one-way ticket to Stalingrad. And it's this courage of this woman who was walking 10 kilometers in the forest at night, without light, with all those people, making sure they avoided the Nazi group, making sure she avoided friendly fire, making sure she avoided the wild boar, and then walking back on her own through the forest, avoiding the same danger and also avoiding anybody who don't want a woman to meet alone in a forest at the middle of the night. Hence her name, Regina, the Queen, given by her friends. So she went back to a friend of the resistance and said, hey, I need another ID. By then they were expert at making fake IDs. So she got that ID and she applied for another job. She didn't want her first employer to know she had another job. And she started working in a school for the French government, funnily enough. She did the morning cleaning, and after school she set up the classroom for the following day. And that was not enough, so she did it again. This time she called herself Mary. Why? Because, well, nobody was sure who was alive or was dead. She assumed a Mary must have disappeared somewhere, so nobody would be surprised to have another Mary appearing, right? And she worked at night in an office, cleaning the offices. Now, you may ask me, when did she sleep? Right, with 3 jobs. Well, she slept in between trains during the day. And that means the whole safety of the railroad was in the hands of 4 kids aged 2 to 6, because the 6 to 10 were at school. Now, if you know any kids between the age of 2 and 6, that's a bit risky, isn't it? So you know what's going to happen next. It happened, yes. One day they didn't wake her up. She didn't put the barrier down. Fortunately, there were no cars, so no accident happened. But she knew it could happen, and she knew she could kill dozens of people. So she could not let it happen. She could not lose her job, because she would lose her house too, on top of having the deaths of those people in her mind. So she had to reduce her hours. She had to let go of one of the job, which brought her back to the previous situation, not enough money. So there was only one way forward, which was to reduce the number of kids. My father was 10 years old. He was the eldest. And so what she did was she heard about a farmer who had lost 3 sons in the war and was looking for people to work for him. So that 10-year-old was given to the farmer in exchange for food. Working condition, well, he lived with the animal in the stable, which were his only source of warmth in winter, and it can get very, very cold where I live, mountains area. He was asked, despite being 10-year-old, to do the work of a man on a farm, so working 12, 14, 16 hours because he was a bit slow depending on the season. He worked 7 days a week because farm work never stopped, so he was not allowed to go to school, where he already hadn't gone because of the war, and he was not allowed to visit his family. He was fed. Also, the only thing he ever mentioned about that period to me was that he was constantly hungry. Most of the information I have is from my grandmother. And then finally, as if that was not enough, there was a farmer to deal with. Every time he saw that little boy working on his farm, he was reminding of the 3 sons he had lost. He had reminding he lost the meaning of his life, which is to grow his farm, to pass it to his son, as a farmer were. And let's just say that mental health was not very good in the 40s in the countryside in France. So every time he saw that little boy, he felt grief, and every time he felt grief, he didn't know how to feel it. So he just beat the crap out of the little boy that inspired those feelings. So why am I telling you this story? Well, basically it's to remove, most of us have slavery etched in our mind from movies in Hollywood. And it's not really like that. What slavery really comes from is precarity and poverty. And this precarity can happen to anyone. You just need to lose your spouse, your job, a war to happen in your country, and we can all fall into precarity. And that's what really feeds modern slavery. The other thing is the vertical link. I just mentioned mental health for the farmer, but again, in movie, you free the slave and maybe send that person back home and everything is fine. Well, it's not fine when you survive modern slavery. You're actually destroyed, pretty broken. And you need a lot of mental health to help you recover. My father never had this mental health. So there are 3 things he never learned in life, and that he could never, ever teach his children. He never taught us that we could feel safe, not with him, not with anybody else. He never taught us that we had any value or were precious to anyone. And he never taught us that we could dream about what we wanted in life. And this is the reality of modern slavery. So fast forward 80 years, what's happening in the world? Well, we're still talking about 50 million people in the whole world dealing with that situation. It's 10 times the population of Scotland. It is also 10 million more than in 2016. So it's increasing. Why is it increasing? Well, it's a matter of dynamics. I'm a problem solver in this room, so you'll understand dynamics very well. COVID was part of it. When COVID happened, for example, all the shops closed, including the clothes shops. What happened is that the whole clothes industry canceled billions of orders in factories somewhere in Asia, usually. 6 billion of wages and salaries were not paid. That put the people working in those factories in a precarity situation I was describing. Some didn't get paid, some got paid less than planned, a lot of them lost their job. Then second half of 2020, all the orders come back in. But this one, the garment industry say, well, we are going to pay you less, and we are going to pay you much later. Factories need to ramp up capacities. They have no money, they can't pay their worker. Forced labor become an easy solution. So what can you do with that story? Well, basically, whenever you buy something, whenever you have a commercial agreement, you can make sure that you're not part of the problem. The first thing is to look at the cost. Most organizations make their suppliers sign a code of conduct, where imagine that all your supply chain, everybody is respecting that code of conduct. How much will it cost to get a product? If you ask to pay less than that, I'm sorry, but you're really part of the problem. It's hard to know how much you should pay, but we at least need to think about a good deal is not necessarily, it may be just too good to be true. The second one is a payment term. So I'm a freelancer. There may be a lot of you among there who are freelancers. We all know the cash flow problem we get when people pay us late or a very long payment term. Now imagine this is happening all along the supply chain. At the end, again, modern slavery suddenly becomes a solution because of those cash flow problems. And then there is the order cancellations. Put an order, remove it, change the quantity. It's so easy, right? There is no penalty to pay. But think about the factory building it. They have a capacity that keep going up and down. How are they going to manage to ramp it up without the cash flow? Again, forced labor becomes a solution. But that's maybe far away, right? I've been talking about factory in Asia. Well, think about in the UK. In the UK, among us, there are about 10,000 to 122,000 people living in modern slavery. 10,000 come from the numbers that went to court and have been judged and proven, but it's very, very hard to prove modern slavery. The 122 is from the expert in the area. And it's 22,000 more than when I first looked at that number 18 months ago. Where do you find them? Everywhere. Cleaning, hotel, restaurant, farm, car wash, fishing boats, manicure parlor, construction, waste processing, warehousing, factories, everywhere. If you use any of those services, we'll see some things you can do to spot the sign and see if maybe there is an issue. Now, basically, it's in all areas where you have temp people with low-skill job. But you notice here there is a care sector. That's not really what I think of as low-skilled. Well, again, what's the dynamic here? Aging population, more demand for carer. Brexit, fewer carer coming from Europe. Therefore, they have to come from somewhere. Now, we all know in this room there is a legal way to do that. But people in other countries that want to be carer in the UK may not know that. So they meet criminals who tell them, give me that huge amount of money. I'll arrange a visa for you. I'll arrange to have housing, and I'll do everything for you. So the family get together, send that person, and when they arrive, they fall in debt bondage. The salary is never enough to reimburse the cost that the criminal are charging them. So by now, I think you need a definition, but you pretty much got it. Modern slavery is when you have an exploitation and when you have a coercion, whether it's by fear or actually physical violence. There are mostly 5 types in the UK. The first one is human trafficking, which include organ trafficking, so the person are killed on arrival for their human parts. Forced labor, I mentioned quite a lot about it. Sexual exploitation, which is actually the most profitable form of modern slavery in the UK. Where does it happen? Everywhere. Fancy hotel, cheap hotel, beautiful house in leafy suburbs, a crappy van on a rest area on the side of the highway. Even your neighbor's flat, maybe if they rented it on Airbnb because they do their dream trip to Australia for 2 months. And this very, very old lady was so sweet and so nice, rented it from them, but then you start noticing people coming in and out at all times of the day. If you do that, please call the helpline. I'll give you the number afterwards. And then finally, domestic servitude, much harder to see because it can be hidden in a home and you never see the person coming out. And criminal exploitation. Now, modern slavery is not just an immigration issue. 25% of the people in the UK who are victims are British. And especially for criminal exploitation, the most likely population are white, young schoolboy from the age of 13 to 15. Why? Because you never get suspicious of a schoolboy being anywhere, isn't it? So they are perfect to carry drugs. Until one day, as recently in France, a gang decided to transform them into hitmen, and they get 3,000 euros to kill someone. If they make a mistake, they have to film themselves, actually, when they do that. If they make a mistake, within 20 minutes, the police has a film of them killing someone with their name and their address, and they can be arrested, so that the next kid will be more careful. So, are we ready to do something about it? Are we ready to look at spotting the signs? So the first thing you have to look at is a social presentation of someone, if you're a bit in doubt. So first, I'd like to say it's not a checklist. It's not because all the signs are there that there is a problem. It's more a matter of a pattern. It's more a matter of your instinct telling you if something is wrong. For example, the other day, I got an Uber delivered at my place. I was expecting a woman on a motorcycle. I got a big guy on a bicycle. So I did go and check with him and had a little chat, and I was fine. He explained to me it was his sister who was sick, and so he took a shift. But he looked very happy. There was no problem. But at least I knew the sign. I tried to spot them, and I knew it was okay to let him go. So social presentation is basically someone looking withdrawn and anxious. And there can be thousands of other reasons, just personality. But sometimes it's a cause for that. A physical appearance, mostly if someone, so for example, visible injuries that are not being healed. So any of us, if we injure ourselves, we go to the first aid, we go to the GP, we do something about it. If you see it's not being healed, it's not being taken care of, there may be an issue. A third one is the living condition. If you hear anything about where they live, 18 people in a room, sleeping on the floor, not being able to sleep well and looking tired every morning, that can be one. And then appear to be controlled. So typically, the criminal gets the salary of that person by registering as them, but sending them to work. So it can be also someone who is picked up in a limousine a bit too often and doesn't feel like they look like they belong to a limousine. Or they don't know their home address when you ask them. Surprisingly, that can also happen. So again, those are not checklists. Those are an overall pattern. They can be, for example, very good reason to be escorted to and from work. It may be that the love of your life is working on the same building, and we just have a nice romance. There is nothing wrong with that. It's just a pattern. Next thing to remember is that the victim may not speak up. So again, different from Hollywood, where they're like, hey, I'm a slave, free me. Well, not really in modern slavery. First of all, they're afraid for themselves, for their own safety. And usually there is a threat that their family will be hurt if they say anything. Second of all, they may have a lack of awareness. And there are plenty of reasons for that. But it may just be you grew up thinking working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week is normal. Why not? And then there are barriers, basically difficulty in communicating to language barrier, being ashamed that maybe a family member put you in domestic servitude, and the difficulty in accepting the situation. How can someone do something like that to me? So just be aware, victim may not know, and that brings us to another concept of consent. If you decide for them what you are going to do and take them out of it, first of all, you put yourself in danger from very dangerous criminal gang. But second of all, you are deciding for them, which is exactly what the criminal exploiting them do. So make sure you always have consent from the person. But what you can do with or without their consent is to contact the modern slavery and exploitation helplines in the UK. It's anonymous, you have experts, and they are here to answer your questions. So it's not report a concern as I know something is wrong. It's, oh, I've noticed something, can you help me decide what I should do? Of course, if there is immediate threat to life, call 999 and the police will sort this out. So just moving on to my key points. The first thing you can do today is to become more aware of your impact and how it impacts other people. There is a very good survey on slaveryfootprint.org that you can take. It's online, and you probably discover the horrible numbers that the average family of 4 in the UK, and that's you and me, uses about 90 slaves unknowingly to keep our lifestyle. That's a scary number, isn't it? So do the test, and you'll see how your specific lifestyle correlates to how many slaves work for you. Then you can advocate and promote the business practice that I mentioned at the beginning. So don't go always for the cheapest. Do your due diligence. Try to pay people on time. Have a short payment term. Don't change your orders all the time. All of this, any of us can do it and try to decrease that risk. Then you can watch out for the signs that I mentioned very briefly. If you go on a website called Justice and Care, you'll be able to find a very nice pamphlet with all of them. Read it, print it, leave it at the coffee machine, leave it in the restroom. The more people know how to spot the sign, the harder it will become for the criminal to exploit people. Therefore, the less they'll do it, hopefully. And then the last thing you can do is help the survivors. So I already mentioned the importance of mental health. If it's something you're into, you can help them. But you can also provide employment, because when you get out of modern slavery, you don't have a CV. You, of course, have other problems to deal with, but you don't have a CV, you can't apply for a job. And there is a group called Bright Future that is very good at helping those people find employment and training managers to help them understand what this person needs. So just to conclude, a last word, I would like to remind you of the 3 things you probably know, the 3 things my father never learned. No matter what's happening in the world right now, in this room, sitting here right now, you are safe, you are precious, at least to yourself and hopefully at least another person. And you are allowed to dream about what your future will be. It's called freedom, and please do enjoy it. Thank you.